Back in 2004, the world's attention turned to Ukraine, where a literal sea of orange flooded the city streets. Now, this wasn't just another protest. This was a moment that would redefine a nation and send ripples all across the globe. Today, we're unpacking the story of the Orange Revolution.
Take a look at this. This is Maidan Nizalezhnosti, Independence Square in Kyiv. It's November 2004. Just look at that crowd. These people are out here in the freezing cold, not for an afternoon, but for weeks on end. So you have to ask yourself, what could possibly bring so many people together like this?
So yeah, what was it? What was the reason hundreds of thousands of people poured into this square day after day? What was their demand? That's really the core question we're digging into here.
Well, it all boils down to a single, powerful feeling that something absolutely fundamental had been taken from them: their voice, their vote. This was the people's answer to what they saw as a completely stolen election.
So what was the Orange Revolution exactly? Well, at its heart, it was a huge, peaceful, citizen-led movement. And the name? That came from the signature color of the main opposition candidate, Viktor Yushchenko. That color, orange, it became this incredibly powerful symbol of their fight for a fair shot at democracy.
All right, let's get right to the heart of it all, the election itself. Because this wasn't just any old political race. This was the spark that ignited a massive, nationwide movement.
On the ballot, you had two completely different visions for the future of Ukraine. On one side, you had Viktor Yushchenko, who was a pro-Western reformer, and on the other, Viktor Yanukovych, the guy backed by the current government and who had really close ties to Russia. So the stakes, they were incredibly high. This was a fundamental choice about which direction the country was going to go.
And look, the fraud was just blatant. We're not talking about a few subtle issues here. We are talking about massive, widespread reports from citizens and international observers of ballot boxes being stuffed, voters being intimidated, and state media basically acting like a propaganda machine for one side. The whole thing was just completely thrown into question.
So you can imagine, when the official results came out and declared Yanukovych the winner, there was this massive disconnect. The government was saying one thing, but a huge portion of the population, armed with all this evidence and their own experiences, they believed the exact opposite. They just knew the truth.
But a fire that big needs a lot of fuel, right? This explosion of anger wasn't just about this one single election. No, it was really the final straw after years of frustration. You had power concentrated in the hands of just a few people, oligarchs controlling the entire economy, and a new generation of politically aware Ukrainians who were just fed up. They were ready for a change.
Okay, so you've got this massive nationwide anger, but anger alone doesn't change things. So how did they do it? How did they actually channel all that frustration into real concrete results? This is where you can see a playbook for peaceful change really take shape.
And here is the absolutely crucial point. Despite all the pressure, despite provocations, the movement made a strategic, disciplined choice to remain nonviolent. And this wasn't just a preference, it was their core strategy. It gave them this huge moral high ground and made it really, really hard for the government to justify a violent crackdown.
You know, there's actually a name for what they were practicing. It's called civil resistance. It's a really organized method of struggle that uses tactics like strikes, boycotts, and those massive public rallies we saw. All of it sustained over time to pressure the authorities into making a change. It's people power, but organized.
And this really gets to their whole mindset. They weren't trying to tear the system down. They were demanding that the system work the way it was supposed to. Their whole goal was to force the state to follow its own laws and respect its own constitution.
So you've got this massive standoff, hundreds of thousands of people in the streets. You'd think the breaking point would be some big, dramatic clash, right? Or maybe some backroom political deal. But that's not what happened. The real game changer came from a much, much more unexpected place.
It came from the judiciary. The opposition took their mountain of evidence straight to Ukraine's Supreme Court. The court actually investigated the claims of fraud and, in a truly landmark decision, did something pretty incredible. It annulled the official results and ordered a complete do-over of the election. This was just a massive victory for the rule of law. And in that rerun election, which was held under intense international scrutiny, Viktor Yushchenko won. The protests had worked. They had forced a free and fair election, and a peaceful transfer of power was actually achieved, all without widespread violence.
So the protests ended? A new president was in power? End of story, right? Not even close.
The legacy of those weeks in the winter of 2004 would be felt for years and years to come, both inside Ukraine and far, far beyond its borders.
You can almost see the impact spreading out in two directions. Domestically, inside Ukraine, it empowered a whole new generation of activists and really strengthened democratic ideas. But internationally, it inspired other movements, while also, dramatically increasing tensions between Russia and the West.
And inside Ukraine, these weren't just abstract ideas. We're talking about real, tangible changes. The power of the presidency was actually reduced. Civil society found its voice, and state censorship started to weaken, which allowed a more independent press to grow. The country just became a more open place.
And maybe its most important legacy was the blueprint it created. Maidan Square became this powerful, enduring symbol of resistance. So when frustrations boiled over again a decade later in 2014, a whole new generation knew exactly where to go, and they drew on the tactics and the memory of the Orange Revolution.
When you boil it all down, that's what the Orange Revolution became. It's this powerful global symbol. It's a testament to the idea that ordinary people, when they're organized and committed to nonviolence, can absolutely hold power accountable and defend the integrity of their own democracy.
But all this leaves us with a pretty crucial question, doesn't it? The Orange Revolution achieved its immediate goals for sure, but a lot of challenges remained. So what does it really take for a moment of people power like this to create change that truly, truly lasts?